All right, everybody, we're going to start the Hangman project. So here are the instructions right here. We're just going to go through in this first video and just set up the variables and the custom blocks that we'll need. So that's the variables, and then in this original gameplay, it says this custom block must be used, this custom block must be used, and up here in the variable setup, this custom block must be used. So we're going to just set up the variables and set up those custom blocks in this video and stop there, okay? So I'm going to scroll up to the top right where it says here's the required variables. So these are the ones you'll display, and then these are the ones that'll stay hidden. But I'm just going to create them all right now. So I'm going to split my screen so I can see them. Okay, so here we go. We're in a new project here in Snap. I'm going to make a variable. Oops, that did not go to split screen. Okay, there we go. So first variable is number of wins, enter. Make variable, number of losses. Make variable, number of remaining guesses. Next one, Hangman word being guessed. So this is like the blanks. As they guess, the blanks get filled in. And then we're going to make a one that's letters already guessed. So this starts out as an empty list, and as they guess letters, you just put every guess they've already guessed into that list. And then that way, like if they guess something they already guessed, you're not penalizing them. You're like, it is hard to remember all the 20 guesses you've made so far, right? So I'm not going to penalize you for guessing the same letter again. Some people want to make their games harder. That's okay. All right, and then here's word dictionary. So this is the collection of words that you can choose from, or not you, but that the program will choose from at the beginning. So maybe there's 20 words all set up. Like, ooh, which one's going to be? Because if you only have like 3 words to choose from, your game doesn't have a lot of replayability. The second game they play, they might get the exact same word. All right, and then make a variable, current word answer. This is going to be the hidden secret answer key. All right, so those are our required variables. We can leave them all showing at the beginning, but in the end, we're definitely going to hide these two. They're hidden from the user. If you want to hide them now, you can. But for debugging purposes as the programmer, it's helpful to see the state of every variable. All right, now you've got 3 custom blocks, okay? So we're really remaking this green split block that's right here. I'm going to just shrink my blocks a little bit, okay? And that just gives me a little more space, okay? So really what we're doing is we're remaking this split block. So let's go down to the bottom. Let's make a block. It is going to be a reporter, and what that means is it's answering a question. So when I click on this, it split it up by spaces, so it split it into hello and world. We are going to redo this where it does split by letter, so it makes a list of every single thing. So it's answering us with a list. That's why we're choosing a reporter block. Okay, and then for the title, I'm just going to take the title that's right here and paste it over here. All right, green, reporter, that, click OK. I've got my custom block. Now I'm going to switch this to an input. I'm going to rename it actually to be like input word, right? Because that's what I'm really splitting up is the input word. So split this word into a list. If I wanted, I could also change how it shows up. I could put it as a bigger block. I could show it up as all sorts of different things. So now when I click apply and I go down, I chose green, so it's at the bottom of the green section. Now it's got a big gap there. So this is my custom one, which does nothing yet. All right, so I'm going to right click and edit it. And what we're going to do is we're going to take in a word like hello, and it'll split it into a list and report it. All right, so let's make it. So I'm going to edit this. Now, we only want to use variables inside this block that either came in as an input or that we made in here and only exist in here. Whoops. So I will right click on this yellow area up top, not left click. Left click brings up this menu. So right click and enable block variables. And then I could use this right arrow to make new ones. I can left click on them and rename. If you right click and rename, it doesn't always work. So just left click on it. We need a temporary list that we will use. And we will use, or we could give it a better name than temp list. It is temporary, but we could just call it a letter list because that's what it is. And then this one, we just need like counter or slot number. Okay, so at the beginning, what we do is we set the list starting as empty. So we go, oh, look at all these variables because I have accessed all the ones outside. Terrible habit. Don't change inside of a block. Don't change a global variable. Leave those alone. We are only going to use these three, the ones that came in as inputs and the ones we made inside. So I'm going to set letter list to an empty list. And then we're just going to cycle through the input word and just one by one dump the letters into this letter list. Okay, so now let's cycle through. So the way we cycle through a list is we set slot to 1. We do some sort of repeat. I like this repeat until, but there's any other version too. We're going to change the slot by 1. So we cycle through the whole thing. And when we're done cycling through and doing what we're doing, we are going to report the list of letters back. Okay. So now what we do here with the loop, that's important. Okay, in the past, we had been using the length of the list and item number of the list. However, we're dealing with a word. So if I were to put something in there that is a word, I would get an error. And I don't want that. So instead of using those blocks, we're going to use the same thing. Okay, so letter of and length of text. Right? So these are different than these. They do the exact same job, but one does it on lists, one does it on strings or words, okay? So I'm going to toss back these, get rid of those. And we're going to say repeat until the slot number goes too far. So until the slot number is past the length of the word. Now what word? We're cycling through the inputted word, okay? We're going from slot 1 all the way through one by one by one by one, changing the slot until we get past the end of the word. Now, what are we going to do with each of those letters as we go through the inputted word? We're just going to add them to this letter list. Okay? So if I was given the word apple, I'm going to cycle through them and go A, put it in the list, P, put it in the list, P, put it in the list, L, put it in the list, E, put it in the list, done. Okay? So we start with an empty list, and one by one, we add things to the list. Now, what list are we adding to? We're adding to the letter list. And what are we adding? We're adding a certain letter of our word. Of what word? It's this word that came in as an input. And which letter? That's the whole reason for a slot number. The slot number keeps track. So we're not hard coding where we're adding the first letter over and over. We're adding a different letter each time. And there we go. So let's apply it. I'll leave that up there for a second so you can see. We can apply it or just click OK. Now when I split hello, it splits it into a list of letters. Okay, great. One of our custom blocks is done. Look at that. Amazing. So I'm going to switch this back over here. And now let's look at the second one, okay? So is this in the list? Is a predicate block. In other words, a hexagon one. So that's the same as this, where is it? Contains. So we're remaking this. Does a list contain? We're just remaking it ourselves to see if we have what it takes. So I'm going to make a custom block. I'm going to choose red because we're dealing with a list. We're seeing, does the list have something? So I'm going to make it a predicate block. That's a list color I meant. Okay. And then I'm going to copy this title. Is letter in list. I'm going to paste it. Okay. Then I'm going to click OK. So now I have a custom block. Again, I'm going to switch this. So here's the input letter. I'll do it as one thing. Oh, shoot. I didn't switch it to an input. Here's an input. And then over here, it's a list input. So here's in list, and here's list input. Now, if you want to get really fancy, we could even choose how it shows up, right? How it shows up is we want it to be a list. You don't have to do that. But now when we click OK, that's the original. And then here's our custom one. Look at that. Is it in list? So that way they know which one's the letter and which one's the list. You don't have to do that. But hey, let's get fancy. Let's splurge on ourselves. We deserve it. Okay, so now all we're going to do is cycle through and see if a letter is in the list, right? So it's our same thing. Takes in a letter in the list. And we just true or false say if it was in there, right? So this is just like the classworks we've been doing end the quiz. So let's edit this. Here we go. That one's already done. So let's right click here and edit. So right now it's blank. We're going to do the same thing we did in the last one. We're going to say we need at least one block variable. That's going to be our slot number, right? Because we're going to cycle through the list. But if we do that, we'll run into an issue and we'll make another variable to get around it, okay? So let's start and see what we come across. So we're going to set slot number to 1. Whoops, to 1. We are going to repeat until we get past the end of the list. So until the slot number is passed. And again, this is an actual list coming in. So when it's a list coming in, we do use the length for lists. So length of the list input. And then each time we change the slot number by 1. Okay? So what we're going to do is we're going to say, did we find it in a certain slot? We're looking at letters in this list. So I could put a little if here. And as we cycle through this list of letters, right? So we're trying to cycle through this list input. What we're doing is we're checking each slot. And we're saying, is the current slot, so I'm looking at a certain slot of my list. And we're saying, is that equal to what? Well, the thing I'm looking for, right? So did I find it? Right? So I'm cycling through my list. Whoa, whoops. And if in the current slot of my list, I come across the letter, then woohoo, I found it. And so now how do we say we found it once, or at the end say not found it? So I'll do it one way, and then I'm actually going to change it later, okay? So one way to do this is you make an is found variable, and at the beginning, you set the is found variable that only exists inside of here, because that's where we want. We just wanted to use it in here, and then we want it to disappear. So at the beginning, we'll set it to false. And then we'll cycle through, and we'll say, hey, you know what? Look at this. I found it. So we'll set it to true. And then at the end, we simply report the is found. So was it true or false? So I'm going to click OK. And let's test it out. So to test it out, I just throw a little list in here. And I say, is A in A, B, C? So is this letter in the list? True. Is B in there? True. Is C in there? True. Is D in there? Is W in there? Is a whole bunch of letters in there? Is cow in there? Is A in there? Is C in there? So it looks like it works. We've tested it out thoroughly. So let's edit it. And I'm going to show you a slightly more elegant solution. A nice thing about functions, or custom blocks, if you like to call them in this language, is when you report something, this block stops. You never answer the question and keep going. So what we could do is, when we find it, we could simply report true. So we came across the answer. We don't need to save and remember that. We just say stop. It is in the list. Done. We don't need to keep cycling through and changing by 1 to finish. We already got an answer. Yes, it is there. But then we don't need this is found variable at all. We can just get rid of it, because look at this. If we ever come across it, stop. We found it. Don't finish searching. You are done. So what does it mean then when you get to the end? If you get through the entire list, that means you never stopped. That means you never found it. So what we can do is just say, if you get to the end, return false. So this is a more elegant way to handle a function or a custom block. You don't need to save and remember, is it found at the end? You just stop when you find it and say report, and the custom block finishes. Done. It won't do anything more. And if it gets to the end, that means it never did stop. You never did find it. So that means you can report false. So again, let's thoroughly check it. So, okay, that's in there. Is B in there? Is A in there? Is ABC in there? Is D in there? Is W in there? Is Z in there? What about the number 9? Okay, so it looks like it works. Okay, so I'm going to leave that one right there. We've got one last custom block. This one will be a little harder to test, but I'm going to make it, and this video is getting a little long, but that's okay. The custom blocks are a big part of getting this game working. Okay, so I'm going to scroll this back or slide this back over the side. So the last one is a command block, and the reasoning behind that's a little complicated, and I'll tell you why when we get there. Okay, so let's first say, it's something about lists, and so let's just make a custom block that's command on lists. So it's a reddish command block. I'm going to put this quote here, and it's not a reporter or predicate. All right, so now I'm going to edit this a little bit, and we'll read through the instructions and see what it's going to do. So asterisks and lists, and so this is your Hangman word. I'm going to call it local, so we're really clear. This is a local version. And this is a list. Okay, we're handing in a list of asterisks with a letter input, and so this is a letter input. Okay, or letter local, or you just call it letter. That's totally fine. Whoops, I didn't change it to input. But notice how I left letter displayed for the user to see. So when I click OK, they see, whoops, I can't do it there. We got to scroll over. Let's just open it up. So see, they see the word letter, and then the input shows up as a blank. Okay, so let's edit this again. And that is in current word list. And so here's current word answer local. Okay. So, or I mean, we could shorten that to like current word local. It doesn't matter. But now I just know which list I'm talking about. And again, this is a list, so I'm going to switch it so it looks like that. Okay, so there we have at least the block set up. Okay, it's empty right now. But here's the idea. Okay, we take in a list of asterisks and a letter to search for and an answer key. So then we use that letter and we go through the answer key. We go 1, 2, 3. Is it in 1? No. Is it in 2? Is it in 3? Oh, I found it in slot 3. And then we change it, but we don't change it in the answer key. The letter's already in the answer key. We change it in the list of asterisks. Okay, so if this came in as star, 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 it was all blank, and this one was banana, and we searched for A, every single place we find an A, we put an A in this list on the left asterisk list. Okay, in other words, we fill in the Hangman word. Whoops, I did not want to delete. I thought I clicked edit. Let's edit. Okay, so we do the same thing, right? It's old news now. We create some block variables. At least we need a slot number, and then we're going to, look, I can even edit this, and I can drag over this same, or I could duplicate this and put it over here. Now be careful with that, because this slot variable is not the same. So I'm going to replace all of these slot variables with slot and slot, because they're actually a different variable, and I'm going to just make sure that this is reselected, or maybe even select off and select back, because I'm a very careful person. You learn to be careful when you're programming, okay? And then we're going to get rid of all these other variables other than slot, because we're doing something different. And so what we're going to do, and we're getting rid of the report because we're not reporting. So it's that same set slot to 1, go until slot is passed. These should have the same length, so it doesn't matter. But I'm searching the current word answer. That's the one I'm searching through, okay? And then we say, if this current slot of the answer key is equal to, what letter are we looking for? Oh, we're looking for this letter. Then what do we do? Well, what we do is we update the Hangman word local, the blank one, right? So that's the one that has no information in it. So you can't search that one for the letter A. It comes in blank, or at least missing the letter you're searching for. And so we search this one for this letter, and wherever we find it, we replace this lists item. And so there's a replace. So which slot number? That's the whole reason for the slot variable. Which list are we changing? We're replacing an item of the Hangman word local. And what are we putting there? It used to be blank, right? It's Hangman. We guessed a letter. We want to put the letter there. So we replace it with the letter. Here we go. That's it. Let's test it out, okay? So we search this list for this letter, and everywhere we found it, we put it in the other list. All right, so let's test it out. To test it, I need to set up a variable. So I'm going to do really quick to test it is I'm going to set Hangman word being guessed to a list of stars. So let's just say the word is cat. Okay, so star, star, star. I'm going to set current word answer. So this is the correct answer to the same length list, except it actually has the answers. This is the one that's hidden from the user, right? So here's cat, answer key cat. Okay, and then I'm going to run this on replace. Here's the current word answer. Really common mistake is people aren't clear about the order and then they put things in the wrong places. And I'm going to search for letter, I don't know, A. And let's see if it works. I'm going to click this. Well, let's click this first. Okay, and I'm going to make my screen a little bigger. Okay, so the Hangman word being guessed is 3 stars. Current word answer is cat. Now let's try and replace with the A. Let's search. Boom. Oh yeah, it filled in. Now let's try and guess T. Yes. Let's try and guess C. Yes, it worked. So there we go. Our blocks work. I'm going to leave them right there. I'm going to save this project. I'm going to share it with you guys. All I'm going to do in the meantime is add some comments to the code so it's a little more clear. I hope you enjoyed that video. So those are the 3 custom blocks and all the variables you need set up. Actually, there's one thing I wanted to add before we go away. And this is a bigger topic. Now, you can stop here if you don't want to get into the why behind this list. But notice that in all of these, I had it report back an answer, right? So when I split this up, I had to answer back with the list and then save it. So like what I'll do is I'll set current word answer to the split up of cat, right? And so that's great. When I do that, it works. It gets split up to be cat because this is the list cat. And so it reports back and gets saved there. So that's great. However, I didn't report back this block. And the reason is when you send an object into a function, it's different. So like, gosh, it's hard to explain. So if I were to send in the letter C, for example, okay, and then inside this block, I set that letter, so I went set letter to A, that doesn't change what was out here to an A. All that gets sent over is a copy of the value. So the C out here would still be a C, right? So like, for example, if I made a variable called test, and I sent in test, and so I set test to C, whoops. Okay, so test is equal to C. I run this block, I run this block that sets it to A, right? So the thing that came in, the C, I just set it to A, but test is still a C out there. So when you send in a primitive thing, a primitive simply means like a built-in native data type, so like a number or a letter. It doesn't send in the actual spot in memory where it's saved. So changes don't actually affect it. All that gets sent into the function is a copy of a C. A generic, here's a C, right? No effect on the stuff from before. However, when you send in an object, the programming language doesn't know what kind of object it is, right? You made some sort of object. It could be some crazy, dynamic, custom thing that only you in the whole world has ever made. So how does the programming language know how to make a copy of it, right? That's actually a big thing, is how do you copy an object? What parts of it get duplicated? What parts are the same? So when you send in a list, which is an object, actually all that gets sent in is the memory location. So any changes to this list that get sent in is a permanent, real change to the original list. That's a big idea that we're going to revisit in every single language this year. But when you send a list or an object into a function, you are actually sending the location of the memory, like the address of your house. And so any change they make to your house, if they come by and paint your house green, your actual house is green. right? So every list, the changes that get made really affect it. So this replace item, we don't need to return a value. Oh, I miss being in class with you guys. Okay, anyways. I'm just going to add some comments and share this.